What up, what up? So, over the weekend, I installed a new server. I did a bunch of dinking around, messed up a couple things. Worst came to worst, I ended up having to reinstall my docker.image file, and it deleted all of my Docker images. So, I was starting to reinstall things, and it got me thinking, what's a better time to make the YouTube video talking about installing Docker applications? So, let's get right into it. The first application we're going to install today is NZBGet. With that, I would like to say I do not condone any illegal activities, illegal downloads, pirating, any of that. This video is purely for educational purposes. Whatever you do with this information is beyond me, and I am not to be held liable. With that being said, we're going to need to create a downloads share in our UNRAID instance. So we're going to head over to shares, add a share, and I've already got a downloads share, but what I'm going to name this one is downloads 2, and we'll leave pretty much every setting in here exactly the same. Add share. All right, now once that is created, we're going to head over to apps, NZBGet, and then you can choose your flavor of NZBGet you like. I personally like pretty much every Docker container that's containerized by binhex, so I'm going to choose that one. Your installation may vary depending on who you choose. I'm going to leave the port exactly the same. Now this data folder, this is where we're going to point towards our downloads 2. We're going to leave our UMask, PUID, and PGID all exactly the same. We'll hit apply. We're going to wait for it to install and unpack and everything. All right, now once that's done, we're going to head over to Docker, and we're going to open the web UI. Mine automatically signs in. I think it's just because I have the login cached, but the default login is going to be NZBGet as the username, and TEGBZN 6789, the default port, and then NZBGet backwards is going to be the password. Bear in mind, if you change the port that this relies on, it will not change the password. The password will stay the same. Learn that the hard way, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into paths, and we're going to double check that your path looks like this, that you have your main data path, which is what you pointed towards your downloads in your server. NZBGet thinks it's just data. UNRAID knows where to point it. And then everything else goes into that data path. So you have your temporary, queue, NZB, intermediate, and completed. So the NZB is going to be the directory for incoming NZB files. Intermediate files are going to be what's being downloaded. Completed files is what has been downloaded and completed, obviously. And then your queue is going to be every file that's brought in, and the download is waiting to be downloaded by NZBGet. So there's quite a few folders that are going to be automatically generated once you install NZBGet, and that's where everything will be automatically organized. Now we'll head over to categories, and I am not sure if this category is automatically in my instance or if you will all have this category, because I cannot remember. Like I said, I'm reinstalling some of these, so some residual files are left over in my app data folder. So one thing you're going to want to make sure you have is a sonar folder with the sonar alias, and then a radar category with the radar alias. And this is how sonar and radar, and when you insert files manually to be downloaded by NZBGet, that's how it will know how to categorize them and move them around in your server. Otherwise, I mean, if you have a huge folder that's just going to have everything combined, not recommended. You can do it that way, and who cares about the categories? But while we're here, might as well just throw it in there. And then once we get onto our radar and sonar tutorials in a later video, I'll show you how to set those up. Then we'll head over to news servers, and this is where you're going to add your Usenet server, your download server. So NZB relies on 3 specific things: your download client, the news server, and the news reader. The news server is what hosts all the files. It's kind of like a, not sure if I can refer to the site on here, but it ends in bay. Kind of like that. It hosts all of the downloads, and you can either go to that site and manually download everything, or you can use a service like this and it will download everything automatically. The news readers are what goes and finds all those files, and then your download client is what obviously downloads. The news reader goes and searches your download clients. So the news reader says, hey, I want this Linux ISO, and then it tells NZBGet, all right, I'm looking for Linux ISO 123, and then we'll have our news servers in NZBGet. So NZBGet will head to the sites that I set up and its connections that I set up and look for Linux ISO 123. And it'll find it, and then it'll download it. And then from there, Radar, Sonar, well, whatever, will automatically pick it up and filter it into my folder. So with that being said, I'm going to add my first server. I use a couple different news servers. One that I like is Frugal, and then Usenet now gives me an unlimited block. Blocks are kind of hard to explain. Space Invader 1 does a pretty good video on explaining how NZB and NZB blocks work. But what it is we have all of these. These are all blocks. Once they're all combined, they make an MP4 or a whatever file. But let's say for some reason there's a DMCA takedown on this block. Well, now this file isn't complete. We're missing one block from the file. So the block servers, what they do is they have an archived cache of all the blocks, but they are also susceptible to DMCA strikes though. So if you remember, the other one had this block down, but the block server, let's say they had a DMCA strike and they lost this block right here. My pinky, there you go. They lost this block right here. Well, the server goes, oh, I have that block. I need this block. So here we go. I know we're getting kind of deep and it's getting kind of weird, but the block server will now give your main server this block. So now this block is refull and our main server had this block. So now we have a complete file and we're good to go. Usually block servers will limit how much bandwidth you can pull from them and how much you can download from them. Usually they're from 100 gigabytes to 1 terabyte. But if you're lucky, sometimes you can find a unlimited download block server. I use Usenet now. They have an unlimited service. I pay monthly for it. But that is, I mean, in a nutshell, how block servers work. Like I said, if you're more interested in how it works, there's many articles and tutorials on that out there. And I'm not a professional by any means. I've just learned from the process of downloading NZB files and such. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but that's just what I've learned. Anyways, let's get right into it. So the first name, I'm going to call my server Frugal1. I'm going to leave it at level 0, so that is main priority. My NZB is going to go to this news server first. My host, the host site can be found in usually the documentation of most news server providers. Same with the ports. So I like to use an SSL port. So Frugal's SSL port is going to be 563. And my password, we are going to click yes, enable SSL, and then we'll leave everything else the same. We'll test our connection. Bingo. We're going to add another server. This one's going to be Frugal EU, but I'm going to have this one as a priority of 1. The server address is going to be EU frugalusenet.com. It's going to be the same port, 563. We're going to enable encryption, test connection, bingo. And then this is where I'm going to add my block server. We're going to leave that as 0. Our host is US News 443. Enable encryption, yes. Test connection. All right, now we're done with that. We're going to hit save all changes, and then we're going to reload NZBGet. I'll show you how to reload NZBGet manually also. So if we go to the Systems tab, every once in a while I'll run into some weird behavior with NZBGet where my downloads will freeze or things will kind of just start acting weird. You can either restart the whole container, or it's a lot quicker. You can just click reload and it'll just reinitialize the program. It's really quick and easy. Just reload, reload, done. And then usually that'll reinitialize everything. One other thing I'd like to show you guys, which is kind of cool that I use, it can be pretty useful when you have a low-end system. If you don't have something that's powerhouse PC, doesn't necessarily need to be a powerhouse PC, but if you're trying to conserve your resources, whether you have a lot of usage on your server, you have a game server and a bunch of people are playing at once, you don't want your downloads or whatever to take up resources, what I have mine do is you can schedule tasks in here. So what I have it do is at 1400, it'll pause all downloads. Until 2200, it'll unpause. So it'll pause all my downloads during my prime game server times, and then it'll unpause them when usually everybody's asleep. And then it'll do the same for the middle of the day. It won't pause them, but it'll just slow down its download rate just to limit my internet bandwidth. And that's something cool. So that's as easy as just adding a task, setting the time, day of the week, and then what you want it to do. All right. And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to head over to messages. Just check your messages. Make sure there's no errors. That's where it's going to tell you. It'll error if it doesn't have write privileges to write the folders. I see no errors in here, so it looks like we're good to go. Follow up for the next video. We're going to set up Sonar and Radar and then set them up with a download client, which would be NZBGet. But if this is all you were looking for, then I'm glad I could help. Have a good one.